Hello, folks. Welcome to the Scumdogs Kennel. I'm your host, Chris Williams, and I have another great show planned for us. But first, while we wait for people to gather in the chat, let me go off and search some more artwork off for you from my own upcoming graphic novel, Scumdogs. All right, just a moment here. Go to this. Let me go over here. Just a moment, folks. Let me get this up here. I want to make sure I'm streaming. Taking a little bit. We're going to be looking at more bizarre cryptids tonight, you know. This is another cryptid corner. Just having a spinning now. We're looking at various monsters and having some fun doing so. But first, while we wait, let me go over and look at this. Here's my extreme 90s cover. This cover I did to harken back to my to the comic books of the 90s. And this is one of 3 different variant covers you'll be able to back when my Indiegogo goes live. Currently, I'm still working on it. Looks pretty good, huh? Now, the name of my comic book is Scumdogs. It's a parody book. I parody cartoons, particularly G.I. Joe and other cartoons like He-Man. Yeah, because they're going to be fun, the parody. Now, the Scumdogs, the title characters, they're basically supervillains. You see, in the future, there's such a thing known as the Scumdog Sports. It's basically sporting events held with superhuman monsters. See, they're scum and dogs because they trade in their humanity for superpowers and to become monsters. So not exactly the nicest bunch of guys around. Basically, this is what you get if you give a bunch of rich people superpowers and what they probably actually do with it. Yeah, they probably would try to take over the world. But they're idiots, so they pretty much are, just funny to watch. And they're equally idiotic enemies, the Space Forces, particularly Buick Starpoon. He was the main enemy of, Death. My 2 main characters here, Death Mug and Buick Starpoon. And they're arch enemies to each other, mainly because they don't like each other because their egos are so huge. See, Death Mug is a former pro athlete who's turned into a supervillain, and all he cares about is power and money and stuff like that, while Buick Starpoon is one of those arrogant, idiotic military types who basically, because both of them have such huge egos, they pretty much instantly hate each other's guts. Now, Death Mug is a parody of various villains from 80s cartoons. He's basically a parody of Cobra Commander and Serpentor from G.I. Joe, mainly because, like Cobra Commander, he's got a metal mask, and like Serpentor, he's got gold on him. And he's purple, like the Shredder from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Buick Starpoon, the guy with the pink pompadour hair, is basically a G.I. Joe parody, mostly of Duke from G.I. Joe, which means he has a military specialty like all G.I. Joes. And he's also a parody of the space hero kind of character like James T. Kirk or Buck Rogers, those kinds of heroes. You get, he's a space captain, and that's what he is. And he fights Death Mug. Now, the other people on this cover with similar uniforms to Buick Starpoon are all part of his team in the Space Forces. This guy over here with the mohawk is Roadhog. His military specialty is that he's an army guy, while this bald guy with the gun down here, his name is Beach Pounder. His specialty is that he's a Marine. And this guy back here in the red uniform driving that vehicle, his name is Blast Tank. He's a heavy vehicle specialist, a tanker. Get it? Now, this covers one of 3 different variant covers you'll be able to back when my Indiegogo goes live. Now, let me go over here. Let's see, make sure I'm streaming. Let's see over here. Now, let me go over here. Right. Hit that like button if you haven't, folks, will you? It really helps me fight the algorithm. Let me show off some more artwork. Now we'll look at Girl Friday. Oh, by the way, folks, hit that like button for me, will you? It really helps me fight the algorithm, as well as please share this video out on social media. Girl Friday here is the second in command to the Wild Rangers. That's the name of Buick Starpoon's team in the Space Forces. Now, the Wild Rangers... the Girl Friday is the second in command of the Wild Rangers, and she was put there by her superiors in the Space Forces, basically to watch Buick Starpoon. Mainly because while the Wild Rangers are heroes who fight the Scumdogs and save the day, they're just highly destructive idiots who do more damage than actual villains. Their idea of saving the village is basically to burn it down. So she was put as Buick Starpoon's second in command, and she hates his guts. She thinks her career in the military is over because she's basically a babysitter. That's Girl of Friday. Over here, we're going to look at, well, let me just a moment, at Death Mug's henchmen. You know, in all 80s cartoons, the main villain of the show would have henchmen, and his henchmen would be total idiots who would never be able to accomplish anything. These are Death Mug's idiots. The blue guy with the top hat is Murder Mouth, and the pink guy down here is Sloppy. There are a couple of idiots that destroy everything in sight, and they're a parody of every henchman from an 80s cartoon. Now we're going to look at Hair Metal Doctor. He's another member of the Scumdogs. Hair Metal Doctor is a parody of Dr. Mindbender, a mad scientist. But my mad scientist here is crossed over with a hair metal musician because I thought it'd be awesome to have that as a villain. You will see him rock out. Look at his hands. Look at him strum. Look at him play that guitar. Now, he thinks of all the mad gadgets and machines the Scumdogs use to try and take over the world. He's Hair Metal Doctor. Now we're going to look at Miss Breasty Melons, who's a parody of the Baroness from G.I. Joe. But unlike the Baroness, she's a party girl who just wants to have fun. She became a villain because she thought it'd be cool. She thinks it's just awesome. That's Miss Breasty Melons. Now the Hair Metal Doctor pinup and the Miss Breasty Melons pinup will be included with my graphic novel with other pinups as well when you go and back it on Indiegogo. But I will also get these pinups out to you on t-shirts for you all to buy from Crypto Fashion as soon as I'm able to make them. I looked at this now. Let me exit these. All right. Now, let's see here. Have you guys hit that like button for me? Now, as I said, we're going to be looking at more cryptids tonight. Have some more fun. Let's see. Maybe as well as alien stories. Alien cryptids. So what to do? An alien, a demonic entity, the Enfield monster incident. Let's take a look at this. The event 25th, 1973 in Enfield, Illinois is still the subject of an investigation and fascination today. Not bad. Let me go over here first. I'll get back to that in a moment. All right. Do this. All right, let's see this Enfield. Let's see this. I'm going to make sure that there's any other stories. The event of 25th April 1973, this is basically a poltergeist case. Maybe I should look at something else. I might want to use this for a different story. Enfield, Illinois is still the subject of investigation. Half a century after they occurred, multiple residents witnessed a strange beast-like creature in and around the community that was monstrous to look at and seemingly possessed the ability to move with elasticity as well as leap remarkable distances. Was this strange creature a strange Bigfoot-type monster, or might it have been a previously unknown animal? Had long called the region home, or might it have been an extraterrestrial or an entity from another dimension? The truth is, all these decades later, researchers and investigators are no closer to solving the mystery of the Enfield monster. However, it still continues to fascinate people with an interest in such matters today. The incident is perhaps one of the best documented encounters with an apparent cryptid creature of some kind, and we will see another case that appears at first to be an isolated run of sightings, but just might share connections with seemingly isolated cases involving very similar creatures. Beginning of a highly strange evening, it's after the sun goes down. Retellings of the account began in evening 25th, 1973. Right, around 9 p.m., where 10-year-old Ray Garrett was in his backyard, and just look what they think the monster looked like. Look at that! Wow. He was stargazing overhead. Every now and then he would make an attempt to catch one of the fireflies darting around him. It was as he was doing this, in fact, when it even took a drastic and strange turn. There in front of him was what he would later describe his parent. Well, he told this to his parents as a monster, approximately 4 to 5 feet tall, with slimy gray skin and glowing red eyes. What's more, this strange beast had 3 legs as well as tiny arms with sharp razor-like claws. The monstrous creature stepped toward Craig, one of its legs even making contact with the young boy's foot and tearing its tin shoe. It was then when Craig turned and ran in terror toward the house. The beast, he busts through the front door. All right, yeah. Ran toward the house. He busts through the front door, immediately informing his parents of what he had just seen, concerned but uncertain of what they should make of their son's claims. He wasn't sure to invent such wild stories. The Garretts called the local police. Officers arrived a short time later and conducted a thorough search around the property. However, they could find nothing there and no clues to suggest that anything had been unbeknown to them. To the Garretts, their neighbors had returned home to a similar claims of a monster-like beast 30 minutes after Greg's encounter. 9:30 p.m. Happened 9:30 p.m. Happened 9:30 p.m. Around 9:30 p.m. or rather towards 9:30 p.m. Towards 9:30 p.m. According to Henry and McDaniel, their 2 children claimed a thing had tried to enter the house. They tried to get through the front door and another time through the window-mounted air conditioner. What's more, as the 2 excited and frightened children were telling their parents the attempted entry, Henry heard a strange scratching sound from the front door. Monster from outer space that hissed like a wildcat. Still listening to his children, though seemingly not making the connection that the scratching could be the result of the beast they were describing, Henry went to the front door to open it. Upon doing so, he found himself face to face with the creature his children told of. After bringing himself to his senses, he slammed the door shut and stepped away from it. He immediately reached for his .22 pistol, grabbed a flashlight, and he made his way to the back door, anticipating that the beast would seek another point of entry into their home. When he opened the door, the creature was indeed there in front of him. Without wasting any time, he opened fire at the creature. However, much to his horror, bullets appeared ineffective. Even though he was almost certain he had hit the beast, he would state that it would hiss like a wildcat before retreating away into the distance. Would further state it moved with a hopping motion, 3 of which it went 75 feet. All right. He would later describe the terrifying creature as having 3 legs, a short body with 2 little short arms. Furthermore, it had 2 pink eyes as big as flashlights, had grayish-colored skin. He would also state it was around 4.5 feet tall. Like the Garretts, Henry would immediately telephone the local police. He would, though, state that he had just had an encounter with a monster, a monster that came from outer space. A short time later, the Illinois state troopers arrived at McDaniel's home. They would immediately go around searching the area around the house. This time, unlike the police searched the Garrett property, the state troopers would discover several strange footprints, similar to that of a dog's, only they had 6 toe pads instead of 4. What's more, the layout of the footprints appeared to suggest whatever had made it had 3 legs. Further searches of the house itself did indeed reveal several strange scratch marks. However, despite the evidence seemingly corroborating the McDaniel's version of events, there was little the state troopers could do with some apparent skeptical. Things would settle down for a little over a week with no further signs of the strange beast that there was about to change. The return in the early hours of 6th, at around 3 a.m., they burst into the McDaniel house where we're about to experience another unnerving encounter. Henry was awoken by the rampant barking of his neighbor's dog. Sensing something was wrong, he quickly got out of bed, reached for his gun, and made his way to the front door. He opened it once more, saw the beastly creature he had witnessed several days earlier. This time it was further away, casually moving along the railroad tracks that ran past the property. Henry watched for several minutes, deciding against any action, given the bullets had seemingly had little effect the last time. After a short time, the creature showed the same speedy hopping ability to disappear into the distance. Several more days followed without any further sightings of the apparent monster. However, during this time, news of the incidents quickly spread around the community and ultimately much further, so much so that people began arriving in town with hopes of seeing the strange creature for themselves. What's more, many news reporters, even scientists eager to study a potentially unknown creature, also made the journey to Enfield. That is interesting, huh? These people, whatever they encountered, looks like they actually encountered something. They don't know what it was, but wow. Fact, such was the intention and subsequent temporary increased population in town that the sheriff of White Country even threatened to arrest Henry if he continued to speak of such incidents. Several arrests were actually made, although these were of hunters of the beast who had opened fire on what they thought was a creature and were consequently charged with being a threat to public safety. It quickly became apparent to local law enforcement that the attention of so many people in the town was as much as a safety issue as the apparent monster might be. This is an interesting point to note, as several other cases of strange paranormal activity has ultimately been washed away as a hoax or left uninvestigated by authorities due to the attention of such events being, for example, during the bizarre goings-on during the Bradge Post poltergeist case, authorities declared it a hoax due to the increased crowds outside the property. We might also recall the strange events known as the Mad Gasser, Mattoon, where the incident increased attention. The town forced them to distance themselves from the case. In each of those cases, then it was the rampant attention and focus of so many people that became a concern to the authorities. This certainly appeared to be the case in Enfield. Sighting, huh? There were, though, sightings of the strange beast. These visitors didn't result in arrests, one of which is perhaps the last sighting of the beast, that of, well, a radio news director, Director Rainbow, huh? He would claim to have witnessed a monstrous creature a short distance away from the McDaniel home near an abandoned property. He would describe the creature as gray and ape-like in its posture and approximately 5 feet tall. Reports also suggest that Rainbow even managed to record the strange and chilling screams of the creature on audio tape. However, this recording has not been made available to the public, although several researchers and investigators at the time claim to have heard the recording. The chilling screams and shrieks were heard by many people in town over the following nights. Then they suddenly stopped. The creatures, it seemed, whatever it was, had vanished as immediately as it arrived. Of course, what it was, where it came, or indeed where it went, was still is a complete mystery. Similar sightings nearby southern Illinois. The year following the incident, one of the investigators in the area during the time was Lauren Coleman, would write in the July edition of Fate magazine in an article titled Swamp Slobs, in Illinois, swamp slogs, swamp monsters attack Illinois, are some of his findings on the sightings. He had, for example, heard the recordings made by Rainbow himself. Let's see. In the article, Coleman would, write that the strange creature, whatever they were so far beyond our understanding that it's no wonder stories about them excite incredulity. However, the fact that so many sightings of the strange, abominable swamp slobs were reported throughout the entire southern Illinois area, combined with the obvious sincerity of many who made such reports, very much suggested at least the possibility that something awfully strange is going on in the backwaters of America. Coleman would then relay the account of just sighting the strange creature in the Borough region of the state. The first such sighting occurred on 25th June, a little after midnight, while parking on boat ramp near the Big Muddy River. Randy Neal and Judy Johnson heard a bizarre and unnerving shriek ring out, a cry they were described as about 3 times as loud as a bobcat, only deeper. However, before they could contemplate this cry much more, they suddenly noticed a strange upright creature bounding towards them. They watched for a moment or two as the 7-foot white-haired creature got to around 20 feet of them before they brought the car to life and made their way from the scene. They would head straight to the police station to report the incidents. 2 police officers would attend the scene of the sighting and did indeed discover strange large footprints in the mud. They would note how the footprints were erratic and that no 2 were the same distance apart. As a note of speculation, might these erratic footprints suggest the creature might have had 3 legs as opposed to 2, as the unfilled creature appeared to have? Further signs of the following evening. One of the officers, Merrill, agreed to retrieve a camera so that he could photograph the impressions of the other. Jimmy Nash, Jimmy, went with Randy and Judy to follow the footprints. It was as if they were doing so that the most incredible shriek they had ever heard rang out. They quickly realized the strange beast-like creature was around 100 yards away and hidden in the woodlands. They quickly backed away from the area and returned to the police car. And incidentally, later that night, the police officers would attempt to locate the reason behind the strange splashing sounds in the area, thinking it might be linked to the strange sightings. However, they were unable to recover the source of the noise. The following night, though, the creature returned again, this time at a little after 10 p.m. The witness of the occasion was 4-year-old Christian Baliol, who would wish to his parents' claim that he had seen a big white ghost in the yard. Would insist that he must be mistaken, dismiss his claims. However, around 10:30 p.m., a similar sighting came to light from the next door neighbors, Randy Garth and Cheryl Ray. It was as Randy and Cheryl were sat on their bark bench when they suddenly noticed something moving in the trees near the property. Cheryl would would even later claim to have seen glowing pink eyes watching them. And what's more, the glow was not a result of any kind of reflection. Instead, were glowing of their own accord. That aside, the description that the pair gave off the creature was almost identical to the witness the previous night. After several moments, wherever it was, the creature retreated to woodland and it disappeared as it made its way from the pair. It continued to strike wildly. The police were called and arrived a short time later to investigate the scene. Like the previous evening, they found evidence of the creature's presence, this time as several footprints. They also discovered crushed vegetation where the creature had obviously forced its way through. They would attempt to follow the trail. A strange slime, a black coloring. Yeah. Well, what was left was a black coloring, huh? A strange slime after it was, you ended up with, there was a strange slime that, after wiping off, left a black coloring. Huh? Officer, was given an officer was given again one of the officers who responded to the call. Let me see. All right. A guy, coloring. Nash was again one of the officers who responded to the call. Yeah. He had with him Officer Ronald Merwin. After discovering the makeshift pathway, according to their police report, Officer Jerry Nillis was asked to the scene to see if the dog would track the creature. Okay, folks, if you haven't yet, please go hit that like button for me. It really helps me fight the algorithm, as well as please go share this video on social media. Now, just a moment here. Let me make sure something's up. Let me do this. If you're not yet, folks, hit that like button for me. As well as please go share this video on social media now. Upon reaching the scene, the German Shepherd indeed began tracking the creature, leading the officers along what appeared to be its to it and stuff. Nash noticed that every now and then a strange slime was visible along the route. According to the report, Officer Nayless picked up some of the slime to examine it when he rubbed it when he rubbed it and stuff like that, it left a black coloring behind. Furthermore, the officers noticed that the dog would hesitate slightly before passing each of these traces of slime. Artists rendering the infamous muddy monster which appeared in the area community in the 70s. The Big Muddy Monster still brings those seeking tall tales and legends to the city today. Legend of the Big Muddy Monster, alive and well. Ultimately, the dog would lead the officers to a heavily wooded area. It was close to a small pond. The area there was much too thick to negotiate. Neelis returned the police dog to the car temporarily while they searched the vegetation a little closer. Finding nothing, Neelis retrieved the police dog once more and then proceeded to research the area a little further, mainly to the south of the small pond. They would ultimately find themselves near an abandoned barn and decided to send the police dog inside. However, within moments of the highly trained canine entering the abandoned building, it immediately ran out. Officer Neelis was dumbstruck as to such behavior, given it was specifically trained to search buildings. When he and Nash searched the barn themselves, they discovered nothing of interest in sight. They would suspend the search a short time later. Good, honest people are seeing something. According to Fate magazine article, there were several further sightings over the following weeks. For example, several carnival workers claimed they saw strange creatures seemingly watching their Shetland ponies. 4th of July celebration. Several nights later, the local woman heard a sudden piercing scream that appeared to come from one of the outbuildings on her farm. When the authorities were pressed for comment on the strange reports and sightings, according to Coleman's article, they had to admit they didn't know. According to Police Chief Toby, they didn't know what the creature is, but we do believe that these people saw was real. He would go on to state that these are good, honest people and that they were seeing something. In the same article, it goes on to note that another very similar sighting occurred several months later on the evening of 16th October, small town of St. Joseph. On the night of question, 14 teenagers were driving their car when they believed they spotted a campfire near an upcoming bridge and pulled over to investigate. Upon getting out of the vehicle, one of the boys struck a match to see better. However, one of the boys struck a match. Upon leaving the vehicle, exiting the car, one of the boys struck a match to see better. However, the light revealed to them that they were only a short distance away from a 5-foot-tall gorilla-like creature. Immediately got back inside the vehicle and sped away. One of the teacher, Bill, was later quoted the champion Urbania, Uh, quoted in the champion Urbania. Suddenly, I wondered if I was nuts or something when he first contemplated what he was seeing. Whatever it was, the 14ers knew that they had seen something truly strange. Might there be a connection to the signs of the infield monster only weeks earlier? Admittedly, some of the descriptions of creature are decidedly different. Might there be then a connection to be found in the location itself? Perhaps one that is home to all manner of strange beasts and creatures. One thing that Coleman asks is the article was the mysterious light that the boys took to be a campfire. This and some potential explanations for it. Indeed, the connection to these strange creatures is something we'll come back to very shortly. 78. Investigations of the infield monster case. Before we examine some further similar cases of the infield monster, we might well do to quickly examine the investigation carried out in 1978, conducted by several researchers. Some of the findings are certainly interesting. They managed to only find 3 of the witnesses who claimed that they had actually seen the creature for themselves. This despite the main signs on the record. Even those 3 people would claim that the counts were largely blown out of proportion. The media, as well as by local gossip, appeared to be investigators that many of the reports in retrospect were claims that snowballed around the local community with each telling. There was also the concern that there were very few pictures taken of the footprints, the scratches, or in Greg's tennis shoe that the beast allegedly tore. And while hysteria and fear might account for this, certain arms of those with skeptical view of the apparent incidents. There are also those who believe that the signs, at least the initial ones, might have contained certain elements of truth, but were then exaggerated in order to attract enthusiasts, essentially tourists. We also note, if this was the case, it wasn't a view shared by the police chief who threatened to arrest Henry McDaniel. He continued to speak of the creature of infield. However, perhaps the main detail of the investigation that clearly lent a note of credulity to the case was sightings of the 2 neighbors who, as we might recall, gave statements describing the exact same creature without knowing of the other's encounter. It was also perhaps worth noting that the sightings of the creature of infield, have not been reported since. We might suspect if a hoax based on wanting to attract tourism was behind the majority of the sightings, that some further orchestrated incidents might have taken place. The Coal Hollow Road monster signs. It might be worth our time briefly to examine very similar incidents that have taken place over the years. Perhaps a good place to start was with a brief spat of sightings that were documented 27th, the 27th of that month. Right. Edition of the Parish Journal newspaper, a little under a year before infield sightings, May 1972, in Illinois. Although this time in Perkin, in the northwest of the state, the northern encounter with an apparent beast-like creature unfolded, known as the Coal Hollow Road monster, sometimes referred to as Gore. After the street the unnerving incident took place on, several friends, including the main witness of Randy Ermit, were on the street in question when they witnessed a large white-haired creature close by. Yeah. Very, very weird. Yeah. What did they encounter, huh? More of these strange creatures, or basically, the white-haired creature sounds similar to the other creature, but not the 3-legged one. So it could be all connected still, though, for some other reason. It's white, hairy, 12 feet tall, huh? What's more, the strange beast made a loud, disturbing, striking sound as it moved about. The witnesses would tell police that they believed the creature had taken refuge in an abandoned house in the streets. Okay. However, several days later, the 25th of May, the local police had taken more than 200 reports from the public of an apparent similar creature as that described by Emmett and his friends, and those reports suggested the creature was moving through the woodlands along the river banks and through people's backyards. One witness even claimed the monstrous creature wrecked their fence. continued the summer of 72. In fact, the reports grew so much that by July search party, the local residents, more than 100 people, was formed with a view of searching the woodlands near the Coal Hollow Road for the chilling creature. However, the searchers would ultimately prove unsuccessful. Sightings through would continue. For example, 25th July, a local resident claimed to have witnessed a large man-like figure covered in hair swimming the Illinois River. 3 days later, on the 28th July, came another report. 28th, huh? This time of a local woman who was picking berries claimed to have seen the strange creature near an abandoned coal mine. She quickly made her way from the area, so scared she forgot to even gather her possessions. Later that evening, another report came in. This one was referred to as as a report as coming from two reliable witnesses. Who would give a detailed encounter and description. They would state the creature was between 8 to 9 feet tall and had white hair all over its body with human-like hands. They also noted that the putrid smell appeared to accompany its presence, and once it had left, they discovered strange foot tracks that indicated it had 3 toes. Following the last sighting, reports of the strange beast died down almost as suddenly as they began. We should also note that just short of 20 years after the incident, 1901, the Peoria Journal-Star received a sudden phone call from Randy Ehrman, who would claim that he had essentially made the whole thing up. While this might for some allow the incident to be dismissed as nothing but a hoax, the fact that many other people at least claim to have seen the creature, whatever the strange creature might have been, and whatever it had connections to other similar settings, strange beasts is open to debate, and something we will turn our attention to shortly. For now, though, we'll examine other similar instances. The similarities the Mount Vernon monster incidents. Yeah, several years later, 77, Dover, Massachusetts, for example, Dover Demon came an even briefer encounter, a very strange creature known as the Dover Demon. Over 2 different evenings, a total of 4 different people witnessed a strange white-gray skinned creature with glowing red eyes. No less. What's more, after a 48-hour period, this creature simply vanished in thin air and was never seen again. In Victorian England, many and around London, a bizarre entity referred to as Spring Hill Jack terrorized the community for years before simply disappearing. Yeah. Sounds very similar, doesn't it, folks? Are these creatures all connected? I mean, what is going on here? I mean, what's the Dover Demon and the Enfield Monster? Are they related? I mean, they do sound similar. They both have very weird skin. And they sound truly, truly alien or bizarre. Let's see. In Victorian England, mainly around town, mainly in and around London, a bizarre entity referred to as Spring Hill Jack terrorized the community for years before simply disappearing into nothingness of time. And while there are the nothingness of something, the nothingness of the world. Let me reread that. In Victorian England, mainly in and around London, a bizarre entity referred to as Spring Hill Jack terrorized the community for years before seemingly disappearing. And while there are certainly marked differences in the appearance, we might do well to note the apparent leaping ability of Spring Hill Jack, which does bear similarities to the beast-like creature we have examined. Perhaps one case, though, is noted researcher Brent Swenser is examining also. Over the 3 decades before the incident took hold, Enfield in spring of 73, 41, 42 came several signs of a similar creature to the Enfield monster in around Mount Vernon, approximately 40 miles from Enfield. Relatively, a stone's throw away. According to the report that appeared in March 1946 of Hoosier Folklore, the summer of 41, a local priest was a squirrel hunting and making his way through the woods near the creek, looking for his next catch. As he was doing so, however, a large animal, similar in appearance to a baboon, appeared from the woodland. Instinctively, as the strange creature moved towards him, the witness struck at the beast with his gun barrel. Although it was temporarily stunned, it wasn't until he fired several shots into the air that the beast made a quick getaway back into the trees. However, over the following evenings, the strange beast would stimulate make its presence known. Many of the residents in the area claim to hear terrorizing screams. Coming from the woodland around creeks. Furthermore, there was also several signs of the creature in the woodlands, as well as strange tracks discovered. The signs and strange shrieking sounds would continue for several months, stretching into the spring of 1942. In fact, so regular were the reports instance that many of the townsfolk were ready to hunt down the beast down for themselves, especially after a local farmer claims the monstrous creature had killed his dog. Ultimately, however, they didn't manage to track down or capture the beastly creature, whether from some strange intuition or purely by chance. It appeared it made its way from the area at the same time as the hunt began. According to the report, there were signs of other areas woodland around 40 or 50 miles away of a similar-looking creature of the coming days and weeks. Interestingly, some witnesses claimed the creature jumped through the air, covering around 20 to 40 feet per leap. Very similar to the infield thing, huh? Devil's Kitchen, a long history of bizarre things. While some of the above creatures had long been spotted in various places across America, indeed the world, there is no doubt the American Midwest, and perhaps specifically the southern Illinois region, had more than its fair share. And perhaps it perhaps does not surprise us then that the region in and around the southern Illinois has a long history of bizarre and unnerving instances. So much so that the Native Americans that reside in the region for hundreds of years call it the Devil's Kitchen and ultimately believe the land to be cursed. Many of accounts indeed speak of beastly-like creatures that roam the dense woodland of the region, while others speak of strange orbs of light dancing in the sky and above and around the trees. There are also tales of ghost-like figures similar to shadow people entities which look around the area. Even more alarming are the accounts of people hearing deathly screams and unsettling cries coming from the region in the middle of the night. Whether we subscribe to this notion of curses and what they might be or represent not. The fact is that all of these locations are home to a plethora of strange going-ons, ranging from strange light to monstrous beasts. All right. Are there connections? Are there any connections? In light of the above, we might well begin to seek out the connections between these strange locations, these strange locations and the multiple paranormal happenings that take place in abundance. There might be an understanding of these help us understand those individual aspects of the paranormal. For example, we mentioned earlier to one of Coleman's observations regarding what might the witnesses such as of signs occurred in 73. They believed it was a campfire. Might this time, in fact, have been the light of some kind of portal or gateway? Well, that sounds outlandish. Even to paranormal researchers and enthusiasts, there have been documented cases of apparent portals appearing in the middle of nowhere and of strange creatures emerging from them. We may also be wise to recall an incident that unfolded during the NIDS investigation, Skinwalker Ranch, in the mid-90s, for example. Well, during a night in August 1997, while monitoring the ranch for strange activity, two NIDS members, Jim and Mike, witnessed a strange yellow-orange light suddenly appear in the distance. What's more, it appeared to be growing in size right before their eyes. While Jim would make attempts to photograph the light, Mike began to view it through the binoculars. By this time, the light was approximately 4 feet by a foot across, and furthermore, it was continuing to grow. As he continued to watch in amazement, he announced to Jim that it's a tunnel, not just a light. Then he claimed that there was something in the tunnel. He would elaborate that there was a black creature climbing out. I see this head. It has no face. It just climbed out. He would continue that the creature, whatever it was, dropped onto the ground and then simply walked away from the tunnel, which immediately began to decrease in size until it disappeared altogether. Might it be that the two investigators had witnessed not only a portal, a creature from another world dimension emerged from it? That is very, very, very nice and cool and interesting to hear about, huh? So they actually saw a weird portal then. Yeah. Might be that two investigators had witnessed not only a portal, and then or another world. It came from another world. And when we keep in mind that all manner of strange creatures are entities are sighted on Skinwalker Ranch, that might these strange portals exist in southern Illinois as well as other locations across the United States. And perhaps even the world. Might the campfire the 4 teenagers witnessed in St. Joseph's have actually been a similar portal, allowing monstrous creatures they witnessed entrance to our world? As well as locations across the United States and perhaps even the world. Might the campfire that the 4 teenagers witnessed in St. Joseph's have actually been a similar portal, allowing creatures. Observations by various people. Coleman also notes that some further observations about the rash of sightings are in the early to mid 70s, Illinois region of the United States, and in neighboring states such as Oklahoma, Indiana, and Missouri. Well, Coleman writes that the creatures reported almost always bipedal, hairy, and humanoid in general appearance. Their colors variously as white, gray, brown. White, gray, or brown. The eyes are usually pink or red, glow in the dark. He would also note that the speed with which these creatures would seemingly move, as well as their ability to leap enormous distances, seemingly from a standing or sitting position. Each of the creatures also appear to make a horrendous shrieking sounds, and most often witnessed when it is alone. There are things, though, that don't match up so nicely. For example, there is a considerable difference between the height of the beasts, with some being around 4 to 5 feet, while there's as much as 9 feet tall. Well, 9 feet tall. There is also discrepancies with the number of legs. The infield monster very clearly was reported with 3 legs. Furthermore, there's also a number of toes and paw impressions that differ from report to report. Coleman also notes that strange creatures occasionally appear in the company of the other invited visitor, the UFO, while many researchers have highlighted comparisons between UFO hotspots and increased Bigfoot sightings for years. It appears that UFO appearance and also accompanies appearances where I'll go with sightings of many strange entities. Might it be that the same, strange entities? It's very interesting. UFO hotspots increased Bigfoot sightings for years. It appears UFO appearances also accompany signs of strange entities. Might be that the same speculative portal that the creature of Skinwalker Ranch emerged from also gives transit to these otherworldly vehicles. A standalone case, or are they all connected with them? With this being a piece of a much larger picture. Maybe. Could be, but it could be, but no one knows for sure. Well, let's see. A much larger picture. Well, the infield monster sightings most certainly stand on their own, as have examined. There are several connections. There are surely connections to other similar cases of strange creatures that appear. Of strange creatures that appear amid a surge of sightings and disappear just as quickly. Might these creatures appear here only temporarily, perhaps due to a crossing of realms of existence that allow them such temporary access to our world? Might this indeed result in the opening of portals, or might be the opening of these gateways so much more planned and predetermined, perhaps with a technology unknown to us on the other side of them? It was to be the case when we need to ask who controls the technology and why are such purposeful crossings through such crossings through such portals taking place. What is happening here? What is the word here? What is happening here? What is this all predetermined and planned? Because it feels like it. But then again, I can't be sure either. Might there be a connection to other seemingly unrelated paranormal phenomena, such as UFOs, apparitions, even hauntings? And might the existence of portals and other dimensions help us understand these connections? Or might these strange and at times unnerving creatures very territorial and of a flesh and blood nature that has somehow gone undetected by modern science? If that is the case, how did such creatures manage to go undetected for so long? It similarly manages to prove that a trace sense. Like many such mysteries, the more questions that are asked, the more questions arise. And given that a certain amount of urban legends and myth can often work their way into such accounts over time, the already muddy waters grow even murkier. Yeah, more is definitely more murky. And we looked at the infield monster, folks. So that was fun. By the way, folks, have you hit that like button for me? Timothy Olsen, so what's up? So what is up? I'm looking at various cryptids tonight. Timothy Olsen, having some fun. So feel free to leave a few more likes and keep watching. 45 minutes in, we looked at the infield monster or rather different monsters as well, basically Bigfoot and this infield monster. So maybe we'll go look at something else. Let's see, go over here. Bigfoot, vanishing, strange deaths in the first abandoned town of Alaska. I guess we could look at that now and some more Bigfoot cases, because this looks interesting. Let's see. Out in the cold winds of the Kenai, Alaska is a windswept array of buildings in the middle of nowhere called Putluck. From a distance, though, the fog seems like perhaps a quick, cozy town nestled around the seaside and surrounded by breathtaking vistas of scenic mountains and forests. But as you draw closer, you might realize that it's actually nothing but some rotted-out carcass of buildings long and uninhabited and twisted, rusted remains of an old cannery. Poking out of the shoreline like the fossil of some ancient deep-sea leviathan. There was once a little paradise away from it, all that one would think of a bustling port that managed to grow and thrive at one point. Yes, this place was at some point forsaken. The inhabitants held under a siege by strange forces they could not understand and could not cope with, leading to the strange phenomenon, mysterious deaths, vanishings, and a mass abandonment in this self-mystery case discussed to this day. Okay. The community of Putluck was first established in 1786 with, the arrival of British Captain Nathaniel Putluck, which the town derived its name. At the same time, the only people who lived there were mostly natives and some Russians. And at first, it was little more than a connection of huts. A serene sanctuary away from the civilization surrounded by natural splendor. It would not be until 1990 that many large-scale settlements would take place. When a salmon cannery was established along the shore of the shore of the bay, the cannery was a fairly big operation, finding vast resources of fish and then spoil clear waters and bringing in droves of people looking for work. Growing to meet the needs of this expanding population of cannery workers was booming. Yet while the town has thrived for some years, in the background it seems that there was a dark and mysterious force lurking in the periphery. Even before the Putluck had even existed, there had been long sinister stories by the natives of the area. They had long told of a creature stuck in the wilderness out of the region, which they referred to as I don't want to bother trying to read that name. I'm trying to read it. Which roughly translates to half man, half beast. The natives were apparently terrified of these creatures and would avoid any area in which they were known to lurk. At the time, Putluck seemed safe, but whether the Nutrink had anything to do with it, or if not, or not, strange things began happening in and around Putluck. Not long after its settlement, the first bizarre incident allegedly happened of 1905, just a few years after the cannery opened. At this time, many of the workers were workers of the cannery suddenly stopped to pay or work. coming back to work and refused to come back with that wasn't due to pay or working conditions, but rather because the men were deeply spooked. They claimed there was something in the woods, commonly referred to as the men as being dark shapes that would stare at them from the tree lines at the shore, and sometimes deeply display menacing behavior. The workers were eventually convinced to come back as the following season, but this was not the end of the town's problems. In the 1920s and 30s, there were several mysterious deaths in the area. It seemed to have been caused by something very large and powerful. The first was a local hunter with the name of Albert, who was out hunting with his dogs in the early 1920s when he became across a massive hairy creature that materialized from the trees to strike him in the chest. Sending him flying Pesca's dogs allegedly managed to chase the beast off, and when the rescuers arrived, he explained what had happened, and before dying from his wounds, natives of the time saw this as a red sign, believing it to be evidence that it persisted for years, only further bolstered by stories of miners, loggers, hunters, or cannery workers of finding large, dark, find huge loggers, hunters, or cannery workers finding huge tracks in the woods, or fleeing dark, large shapes, and sometimes hearing eerie hills at night, making it even more ominous that there were some reports from frightened natives that there was a ghostly entity in the area, as well as which took the form of a man, took the form of a woman wearing a long black dress, who would also appear at the top of the cliffs near the town to scream and moan before vanishing. Interesting, very interesting. The 1930s was another alleged violent attack in the area. On this occasion, a logger named Andrew Kimrick went off to the site, unusual, but was later found dead in his head, bashed in by police of logging equipment. It was very odd because the body was found some distance away from the actual site, and the pieces of machinery used to kill him. It was far too heavy for any man to have even picked it up, much less drag an even significant distance. Well, a significant, so much to kill him versus for too heavy for any man to have picked up, much less drag it any significant distance. After this, things began to get rather sinister. It was reported that people began going missing fairly regularly, going off hunting or to their jobs and never returned. Stories like this sent the natives into a panic, and many of them fled altogether. Local historian Brain Reed was said of this. When the 30s incidents started to happen, most of the Russian Inuits actually moved out of town for a year. The time to come back, they set up an armed guards for a distant period of time, trying to get their workers back in town. All right. Most were eventually coaxed into coming back, but this was not nearly the end of the weirdness. Some people continued to disappear without a trace, and sometimes the missing were found in quite the gruesome state. 1940s, it was reported that a search party had been sent out to look for such a missing hunter, which would claim they had come back. Which would claim they had come look for such missing hunter, which would look for a missing hunter, which would yeah. Hunter, which would claim they had come across the body in a creek and mutilated and torn apart in a way not consistent with a bear attack. One of the bodies would ultimately be found as well. Bear attack. Other bodies would reportedly be found as apparently washed down from the mountain washed down from the mountains in a nearby lagoon with all of the lagoon with all it's discovered washed up in the shores of Port Chatham. All of them were ripped apart and maimed as if by some immensely powerful animal. At the time, there were also so many people around turning up in the lagoon dead that it began to truly spook the locals to the point that they would spend so much time cowering indoors away from those gloomy woods. Interesting. Not so sure I'm going to finish off this article today, but hey, we are looking at a bunch of cryptid. We're looking at a bunch of weird cryptids tonight. These signs and disappearances coincide with a wave of signs of a large hairy creature and less identifiable shadow entities. On one occasion, a local man named Tom Larson claimed to have seen one of the beach methodically tearing apart fish wheels, but said that when he had tried to shoot it with his rifle, he had felt utterly compelled not to fire. The settlers called these things the mountain apes, hairy men, or, just devils. The natives also called them the name, but whatever one is called, all of the strangeness and death spurred on a massive exodus from the area towards the end of the 40s in 1951. The town was completely abandoned, leaving the buildings, equipment, and cannery behind weed. And it said of this. Let me go back over here, folks. If you guys hit that like button for me. Timothy Olson, the next topic you should take is abandoned places. Maybe I should. Let me see this. Hit that like button, folks, if you have not hit it yet. Let me go over here. Let's see. These disappearances and deaths coincide with a wave of sightings of a large hairy creature. Less identifiable shadow entities. On one occasion, a local man named Arson seen one on the beach methodically tearing apart fish wheels, but said that when he had tried to shoot with his rifle, he had felt oddly compelled not to fire. The settlers called these natives mountain apes. Or just devils. But whatever one called them, all the strangeness and death spurred on a mass exodus from the area towards the end of the 40s, and by 1951, the town was completely abandoned, leaving all the buildings, equipment, and cannery behind. Weed had said of this. Those people did leave the town. We know that when the town and post office was shut down, we know that there are reported murders in the area. They called them murders, but they also included people that just went lost in those reports. We were talking about a dozen people. We're talking about like 3 dozen people. If we have a serial killer in the area at the time, they took out a lot of people in the course of, say, 20 years. Even the abandonment was not the end of the strange phenomenon in the area, as there have been Bigfoot sightings in the area since. Some examples of it are a man who claimed to have been chased by Bigfoot in the area in 1968, and another case in which 3 hunters said that their camp had been circled, menacing large creature for 3 nights. In 1990, there were apparently native men who suffered and stuff like that. And when paramedics came to save him, he ran. Did it bother you? Did you see it? There can be no doubt that this place was rather suddenly left to the elements and shunned by those who once made their living here. But what was it? Was this a serial killer on the loose, wild animals, Bigfoot, spirits, demons, something else altogether? Now we do not know. In the decrepit ruins and what was still sits upon the bay, with the only ones knowing the true answers are the trees. Okay, we looked at that. There was a pretty good couple of cases there. We looked at Cryptid Corner, looked at those stories, all very interesting. Let me go over here, folks. 59 minutes in. Please, folks, go and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Read comics, they're bad for you. Like that. Make sure you're still subscribed. Hit that like button because it helps me fight the algorithm so more people can see my content, as well as hit that bell, as well as make sure to hit the part that'll give you all all the notifications for my future live streams, as well as leave some comments down below. Also, please go and subscribe to Stitch Together Picks. Stitch Together Picks is a YouTube channel that deserves far more subscribers. It's a great YouTube channel, as well as go over to Creepy Little Book and subscribe to him. Creepy Little Book is like the Art Bell radio show. He live streams every night. He releases small videos talking about high strangeness, but he live streams every night. He live streams on weekdays at 12:30 a.m. and on weekends at 11 o'clock p.m. Go and Creepy Little Book talks about ghosts and aliens, and it's just a lot of fun. As well as go over and subscribe to on Twitch, the Robot Co-op. Robot Co-op is a great channel. It has some great content. You're going to love them. As well as please go and subscribe to my Rumble channel. Just go over to Rumble and find my channel. It's under the name Comic Freak. As well as go over to BitChute and subscribe to my BitChute channel. It is also named Comic Freak. Remember, folks, I'll be back again tomorrow around 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock or 8 or 10 for another live stream. So be sure to come back again. I'm Chris Williams from the Scumdogs Kennel.